Welcome to another edition of the Battle for Progressive Media. Tonight we'll be taking another look at the internal politics of progressive radio station WBAI, where elections to the local station board, or LSB, are taking place. We'll be hearing from Nia Bediaco and Ray LaForest, both candidates for the board from the Justice and Unity campaign, an anti-racist slate committed to maintaining activist-oriented programming, talking about why they want to run for the board and their plans.
I came in this country in 1968, fleeing persecution in Haiti, and I became involved immediately with the Asian communities and surrounding issues. And BAI, once I discovered it, became the focus of my education and news gathering and political life to some extent. So I became a user of WBAI, not only listening to the news and the programming, and as the activities I became involved in developed, I became a guest speaker on different shows, expanding the struggle and presenting and educating people and seeking support for my struggle and the struggle of my community. So for me, Pacifica and WBAI have always been the umbilical cord, the very connection to, particularly for the Haitian community, which speaks Creole primarily. This is a primary connection to the rest of the world, the other communities that are struggling, for us to find out about their fight, to learn from their experience, to share with them and ask for their support. And so for us, Pacifica equals life.
I absolutely love the programming at WBAI. I would like to be part of a movement to ensure the viability of WBAI, where you can hear dissenting voices.
But WBAI's progressive programming is at the center of a fight which became so nasty that one general manager resigned, and the current program director has found himself under frequent political attack. The rancorous debates have disrupted a number of meetings of the local station board.
Nazi party fascist.
All right, it carries unanimous.
Opening up the camps. Gulag. Fuck you. Fuck you. Object all you want.
I make the motion to rescind the board's prior decision to expel functionally Paul DiRienzo from the board.
Those were scenes from local station board meetings in the winter of 2005, where member Paul DiRienzo began abusing other board members because of his disagreements with the chair and the board majority. When we come back, we'll talk more about DiRienzo's behavior and the suspension he received, as well as his current bid for re-election to the local station board.
Inspire. In struggle and love, we need to tell everyone there is more than enough. Talk about working folks, war and peace, hungry for honesty, hope and release. Trying to stay alive until I die. I don't ask for guarantees, but I need high fidelity.
Welcome to another edition of the Battle for Progressive Media. I'm John Riley, a producer with Out FM, the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender show on listener-supported, non-commercial WBAI, which broadcasts at 99.5 FM and on the internet at wbai.org.
I'm Margaret Dominique, producer and host with Haiti, The Struggle Continues, also broadcast on WBAI, a part of the 5-station Progressive Pacifica radio network, which has 90 affiliates around the country. The program you are watching is not in any way affiliated with WBAI.
Pacifica has a long history as a peace and justice radio network, putting onto the airwaves hosts and guests that have challenged this country's war machine, its racial injustice and denial of workers' rights.
Pacifica has a long history as a peace and justice radio network, putting onto the airwaves hosts and guests that have challenged this country's war machine, its racial injustice and denial of workers' rights. Pacifica did extensive coverage of the civil rights movement, free speech movement, Black Power, gay and women's liberation movements, to name a few, right up to the present day.
It's been the target of government repression on several occasions, and one station, KPFT in Houston, Texas, was twice bombed off the air by the Ku Klux Klan. In this episode, we'll look at candidate Paul DiRienzo, a member of the local station board who was suspended last year. Here's a scene from a January 2005 meeting in which he shouted Nazi salutes and demonized the local station board chair, who was conducting a vote on a motion to create a new search committee for a new general manager. The committee included representatives of paid and unpaid staff, as well as listener representatives, with staff in the majority. DiRienzo opposed that, insisting that listeners be in the majority. You'll see Chair Vajra Kelgar conducting the vote. You'll hear the voice of DiRienzo accusing his opponents of being Nazis and shouting Nazi salutes. And you'll see some of his comments captioned underneath the image at the chaotic end of the meeting.
We're voting now on the question of whether to put the substitute motion in place of the motion made by Serene. All those in favor of substituting this motion to Serene's motion, raise your hand. All those in favor of substituting this motion for Serene's motion, raise your hand. Yes or no on the motion on the
DiRienzo?
C. Kyle.
DiRienzo?
Yes. Kyle.
Shame on you,
Ray. Yes. Shame. Yeah.
DiRienzo's disruption continued for the entire length of the vote.
A few weeks later, at the February 2005 meeting, DiRienzo again lashed out at board chair Vajra Kelgar after she made a ruling concerning behavior that was out of order.
You this, you that does not belong in a discussion. Members are to address the chair. They are not to engage in characterizations of other members or
their politics? You're telling me their politics?
Yes, and
fuck you! Fuck you! Object all you want.
Language is disgusting.
We're not on the radio. We're not on the radio. At the board's next meeting on March 2005, board member Lisa Davis, a member of the Justice and Unity campaign, introduced a resolution to suspend DiRienzo for these and other outbursts.
DiRienzo became angry at the resolution and shouted at the board through most of Davis's reading of her resolution.
I will continue in this meeting, and I will participate in this meeting, and when you switch it to this
right now. Okay. Lisa has a motion to bring.
I have a motion I'd like to make right now. Thank you.
Make it all you want.
Whereas Robert's Rules of Orders, which the Pacifica Bylaws requires has this board to follow, prohibits board members from engaging in personal attacks on other members during meetings, and further states, the 10th edition, page 624, line 7, that an organization or assembly has the ultimate right to make and enforce its own rules and to require that its members refrain from conduct injurious to the organization or its purposes. No one should be allowed to remain a member if his retention will do that kind of harm. And further states that allowable penalties for serious disciplinary breaches include mandatory apology, suspension, and expulsion. And whereas board members
Mr. DiRienzo,
in a manner that maintains order and allows business to be conducted at meetings, And whereas consistently disruptive and abusive conduct would not be tolerated in meetings of other nonprofit organization boards, unions, community boards, or city councils. And whereas LSB member Paul DiRienzo has consistently engaged in conduct over the course of several LSB
Mr.
meetings
DiRienzo,
that
I
has
am
been
calling you out of order repeatedly.
abusive, threatening, and obscene, including repeated hurling vicious epithets at the chair and other board members, specifically at the January 2005 public LSB meeting held at New York Community Church. Mr. DiRienzo repeatedly spoke out of turn with verbal abuse, including launching a 5-minute stream of invective at other board members, sometimes getting out of his seat and thrusting himself to within inches of the faces of other board members and shouting such things as a Nazi salute.
The board passed the motion of suspension, and their decision was ultimately upheld by the Pacifica National Board. DiRienzo has never complied with the resolution's requirement to apologize for his conduct, which would allow him to be reseated and so remain suspended to this day.
DiRienzo had supported the Christmas coup of 2000 when the corporatist mainstreamers took control of WBAI and installed Utrice Lead as interim general manager. Within weeks of the firing of program director Bernard White and several other staffers, DiRienzo got a paid job doing news for the restructured morning show. More than a year later, after the network was restored to progressive control, DiRienzo became a paid producer for Gary Null, an alternative health host on WBAI and Vitamin Entrepreneur. DiRienzo then ran for the local station board, benefiting from the endorsement of his candidacy on Null's website, which was later ruled a campaign violation, by the election supervisor. In January 2004, in the midst of that election campaign, DiRienzo publicly wrote an article called, quote, 10 Reasons to Boycott WBAI, close quote. Yet he was elected anyway, despite the bylaws requirements that board members must help the station maintain its financial health. The proportional representation method used by the Pacifica Network ensures that candidates with approximately 1/9 of the vote can win a seat on the board.
Local station board candidate Nia Bediaco discusses the impact of DiRienzo's behavior on her and the audience.
And that type of behavior by any board member should absolutely be unacceptable. Sitting in the audience and listening to a man abusing a woman like that is actually quite scary. As a matter of fact, there was a woman in the audience who said that. There are ways for people to express themselves, and actually saying F you twice to the chair is totally inappropriate. And I do not see how anybody who behaves like that should think that he or she should even run for the board.
Local station board member and candidate for re-election, Rayla Forrest, comments on DiRienzo's conduct.
I mean, it's plain to see, and also what is plain to see is the complete passivity of people who are his allies, and one of them even going as far as saying, that can be heard on tape, that we're not on the radio, as though this is okay. And this behavior, although as extreme as it is, has not been unique. Others have not gone to such lengths, but have disrupted the work of the board on a regular basis. The beginning, once Paul DiRienzo was suspended, people who were his allies would demand that he be counted and be allowed to vote, which was illegal, obviously, and they would follow up to 15 or more minutes of yelling and screaming and arguing. That would happen at every board meeting. And this has seriously disrupted the activities of the board, and this is not the only reason, but has prevented us from achieving our goal. It's taken as much as an hour to set up agendas sometimes. And that is the situation, and it should be changed.
One of DiRienzo's allies on the board has been Steve Brown, a multimillionaire, former direct marketing executive, who was at one time a business partner of WBAI host Gary Null. Brown and his $7 million chateau were featured earlier this year in the New York Times. During the period of the coup at WBAI, DiRienzo and Brown were political adversaries, but now have become strong political allies, and Brown has endorsed DiRienzo for election. In the last episode of the Battle for Progressive Media, we covered the 3-year-long vitriolic email campaign conducted by Steve Brown against members of WBAI's management and staff, whom he opposes politically. Brown's email campaign ran into disapproval from the very board on which he sits. This past March, the WBAI local station board disassociated itself from many of his statements in a lengthy motion that took no action against Brown, but which criticized him for making what the board termed, quote, unsubstantiated charges, negative attacks, and racially charged rhetoric, close quote, and for, quote, undermining fundraising efforts, close quote. The board also criticized Brown for an open letter he wrote to the manager of Pacifica-affiliated radio station in Boulder, Colorado, KGNU, which he lauded for what Brown claims was their lack of conflict because of the overwhelmingly white makeup of the staff and listenership.
Brown has expressed outrage over the motion of disassociation, claiming that it damaged his reputation. WBAI local station board member and candidate Rayla Forrest discusses the impact of Brown's email campaign on WBAI.
This flood of email that interpret what's happening around us, you know, to his own definition of the world, and discourage and really turn people down and turn people off. Sorry, I've focused at times particularly on the Bernard White and accusing. I have some quotes here from a resolution that we brought on the board against him, accusing those who supported Brown of being, quote, defenders of the people of color. Incredible. He has qualified. He has called the WBAI meetings. He's called them, quote, virtual race riots. He has have an email here that he started Bernard White froth at the mouth in WBAI's hallway. So there are both a distortion and clearly some racial tone to these statements. And last but not least, more recently, there was a supposed incident between the general manager and the Bernard White, the program director, and in calling for people to have come to the defense of the general manager, he said, quote, and I'm quoting his email, "You should have been at her side whacking Bernard White with a baseball bat." Is that a call for action, for violence? And also, he's made a statement that Bernard White was, for WBAI, quote, worse than Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, and George Bush combined. So this avalanche of negative recognition of what's happening at the station certainly have turned people off. And unfortunately, some people who have voted with him, besides this constant attack against station management and us, have also, some of them have even called for people to essentially boycott the station and not provide funds until, I guess, they're back in power.
WBAI local station board candidate Nia Bediako gives her view.
It does impact the station when you write those articles to listeners, because of course they at least ask what is going on. And when you talk so badly about a station constantly, of course no one wants to subscribe to the station.
Board members and re-election candidates Paul DiRienzo and Carolyn Burton have openly called for adding, quote, conservative, close quote, hosts to WBAI. Rayla Forrest comments.
This is a serious issue, however. This network of Pacifica was specifically created to be a voice for the voiceless. Not the conservative individuals who are ruining the society right now and control the media. As big as BAI and Pacifica and Democracy Now! And all the affiliates are, we're still a little dot in the ocean. And what we have to struggle is to increase our point of view. This is a rather surprising point. It is a naive and certainly misguided point of view that we would play in the hands of those who destroy us and who do not represent the interests of the majority of this society, whose propaganda is weave and distorts every issue from weapons of mass destruction, that poor people are responsible for their own destiny, and we know all the power of the media. And I think it would be foolish for us to take the very few resources available to us. I have nothing against having diversity within a group of guests, for example. Amy Goodman and others have guests from across the spectrum. And so we can hear both sides and discuss the arguments and understand the issues.
Nia Bediako discusses this nightmare scenario in more detail.
I think having conservative hosts at WBAI would be absolutely destructive. First of all, it goes against the mission of Pacifica. And number two, let's take, for example, we should have Bill O'Reilly. What would happen is that his constituents, they would sign up to become members, and I'm sure they would have millions of them. Those people that would become members would eventually run for the board. They could become board members, and they could take over the board. Those people then will go to the Pacifica National Board, and then there goes Pacifica Network.
Campaign finance reform has become an issue in this campaign, despite the fact that the station pays for mailing all of the board candidate statements to the voters and an on-air candidate debate. The Pacifica bylaws also allow election candidates to send promotional mailings to the entire voter pool, currently 17,000, if they can raise the thousands of dollars required for printing and postage. The Justice and Unity slate publicly decried the unfair influence of access to funds on the campaign and challenged all board candidates to pledge to not use private mass mailings. The group promised to refrain from doing such a mailing if all candidates agreed, but board candidate Steve Brown contemptuously rejected the offer.
It's becoming a two-party system at Pacifica. In order to get on the board, you have to have money to send out a massive mailing appealing to listeners to vote for you. This is not what I expect from Pacifica. If the ballots are being sent out, if the organization is spending money to send out ballots and a statement or a brochure, I think that that should be sufficient. If we want to increase the amount of debates on the radio, I am all for that. But I cannot see us mirroring the country's political system. That is absolutely un-Pacifican, and it should be abolished.
Candidate Ray LaForest discusses the ways that WBAI meets the needs of various communities, and specifically the efforts made by himself and allies of the Justice and Unity campaign to have the Pacifica Network establish a nationwide daily Spanish language news program. The Spanish language news program is on WBAI Program Director Bernard White's proposed list of programs to be added to the schedule in the next round of changes.
This issue is clearly part of a broader issue of making space available in the air for various communities as per our mission, communities that are made up of working people fighting for a different society, and which need to be part of this this panoply, of groups that represent our community. So clearly we need strong voices from the Latino community, and we're making strong progress in that direction. I personally have been involved as a member of the Pacifica board in helping promote and pushing for the acceptance of the idea of a national Spanish language news program.
Justice and Unity member Ray LaForest talks about the group's proposal to expand the number of channels that WBAI broadcasts on using this station's sideband frequency that is currently unused, live internet streaming, and the new technology of high-definition radio, or true digital radio. This strategy could result in bringing more voices to the air and easing competition for scarce airtime.
The perennial problem in radio, certainly at WBAI, has been that there are only 24 hours a day and countless amount of people and communities that would have their voice heard. So we've been thinking about it, and one of the solutions Justice and Unity has come up with is to use existing technology, specifically high definition radio, to provide additional channels for our programming, specifically 2 additional channels that would allow for production of new shows, pilot shows in phases up to 5 years, and for which we would obtain grants and move toward the future. But we believe that this is the way to go, and we're excited about it.
WBAI local station board candidate Nia Bediako describes her concerns.
This proposal for this 5-year plan will be in 3 phases. Currently, I don't know if most of you know that there are 2 sidebands. One's being used and one isn't. The one that's not being used, we could use that immediately for pilot programs, because everyone is always saying we don't have enough of this community voice being represented or the other community voice being represented. My big thing is I absolutely love Democracy Now! And I think that it should be re-aired. This might be a place where Democracy Now! Could be re-aired on this band that is just sitting there waiting to be used.
Ray LaForest explains why he encourages people to vote for Justice and Unity slate.
Well, one of the major struggles at BAI has always been how do we define what we stand for. And for us as Justice and Unity, we've always felt that a key segment of the mission has been representation of communities. There are people on the other side who say, well, if communities care, if those communities care so much about the station, where the hell are they? Well, our challenge is to bring them, to make WBAI relevant to them.
Ballots were mailed to all WBAI subscribers on October 16th. The Justice and Unity campaign urges voters to rank their candidates on the ballot in a specific order to increase the chances that as many of its slate's members as possible get elected. For more details on this order, go to www.justiceunity.org. Tune in again in 2 weeks on November 4th at 10:30 p.m. to MNN, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, Channel 34.
Tell your friends in Brooklyn to tune in on Fridays at noon on Channel 34 Time Warner or Channel 67 Cablevision, or check our website for other locations and times and for downloadable and on-demand video and audio files of past and present programs.
This is John Riley
and Margaret Dominique reporting for the Battle for Progressive Media.
Inspire in struggle and love, we need to tell everyone there is more than enough.